She was trapped with a monster. Then a four-legged angel showed her the way out. The small town of Havenwood, nestled in the rolling hills of Iowa, was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, or at least they thought they did. The white picket fences and neatly trimmed lawns presented a picture of idyllic Midwestern life, a postcard of Americana. But behind the closed doors of the Peterson house on Elm Street, a different story unfolded, a story etched in silence and fear. Anna Peterson was a woman of quiet strength, worn down by years of unspoken suffering. Her hands, once nimble with needlepoint and gardening, now trembled slightly, a constant reminder of the tremors that shook her soul. Her eyes, a faded blue like a summer sky after a storm, held a deep sadness, a weariness that went beyond her 40-odd years. She moved through her days with a practiced efficiency, a routine designed to avoid attention, to minimize disruption, to survive. The house itself was a reflection of her inner state. It was meticulously clean, almost sterile, as if Anna were trying to scrub away the darkness that clung to the corners. The curtains were always drawn, shutting out the prying eyes of neighbors, and the air inside was heavy with a stifling quiet. The only sounds were the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, a constant reminder of the passing of time, and the occasional muffled thud from upstairs, a sound Anna had learned to dread. John Peterson was a man of contradictions. In town, he was known as a hard worker, a regular at the local diner, a man who always had a joke and a slap on the back for his friends. He worked at the local lumber mill, his strong physique a testament to years of physical labor. But at home, behind closed doors, he was a different man. The jovial mask would slip, replaced by a cold, hard stare, a simmering anger that could erupt at any moment. His words, sharp and cutting, were often followed by the terrifying silence that preceded the storm. The drinking started subtly, a couple of beers after work, a way to unwind. But over the years, it had become a crutch, a fuel for his rage. The smell of stale beer and whiskey was a constant presence in the house, a warning sign that Anna had learned to heed. When John came home drunk, the routine changed. The door would be locked, the lights dimmed, and Anna would become a prisoner in her own home. The abuse wasn't always physical. There were the long, agonizing nights of verbal torment, where John would tear down her self-worth, piece by piece, until she felt like nothing. He would call her names, belittle her accomplishments, and remind her of her dependence on him. The words were often worse than the blows, leaving scars that were invisible to the outside world. One cold December evening, a year after the worst fight they'd ever had, Anna found a small, shivering creature huddled beneath the porch steps. It was a ginger cat, skinny and matted, its fur barely providing any warmth against the biting wind. Its eyes, large and green, were filled with a desperate plea. Anna, seeing a reflection of her own vulnerability, couldn't turn away. She brought the cat inside, wrapping it in a soft towel. She warmed some milk and offered it to the trembling creature, which lapped it up gratefully. The cat was wary at first, flinching at sudden movements, but it soon seemed to sense Anna's gentle nature. It allowed her to clean its fur and examine its thin body. There were no signs of serious injury, just neglect and hunger. "You're safe now," Anna whispered to the cat, her voice barely audible. "You're safe with me." She named him Rusty, for the color of his fur. He quickly became a fixture in the house, a small spark of warmth in the cold, silent rooms. He followed Anna everywhere, rubbing against her legs, purring softly. He seemed to understand her moods, offering a comforting presence when she was feeling down. One evening, John came home in a particularly foul mood. He had lost money on a poker game, and the whiskey had amplified his anger. He started yelling at Anna, accusing her of being lazy and useless. His voice grew louder, his words more vicious. Rusty, who had been sleeping on the sofa, suddenly jumped up, his fur bristling. He let out a low growl, his eyes fixed on John. It was a small sound, almost inaudible, but it was the first time Anna had seen any creature stand up to her husband. John scoffed. "What's that mangy thing going to do?" he sneered. But as he raised his hand to strike Anna, Rusty hissed and swatted at his leg, his claws extended. John, surprised by the unexpected attack, stumbled back. He kicked out at the cat, sending it flying across the room. Rusty landed with a thud, but he quickly scrambled to his feet, his eyes still blazing with defiance. Anna felt a surge of something she hadn't felt in years, a flicker of hope. This small, fragile creature had dared to challenge John, to defend her. It was a small act of defiance, but it was enough to plant a seed in Anna's heart. A seed that whispered maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely powerless. The days that followed were marked by a subtle shift in Anna's demeanor. The presence of Rusty, his unwavering loyalty and quiet affection, began to chip away at the wall of fear she had built around herself. They developed a silent language, a bond forged in shared vulnerability. She would talk to him, pouring out her heart in hushed whispers when John was away, sharing the fears and anxieties she couldn't voice to anyone else. "He scares me, Rusty," she confessed one afternoon, stroking his soft fur. "But you're not afraid, are you? You're so brave." Rusty would purr in response, nuzzling his head against her hand. It was a simple gesture, but it brought Anna a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in years. He became her confidant, her silent witness, the one being who truly understood her pain. She found solace in his presence, in the way he would curl up beside her on the sofa, a warm, purring weight against her side. Anna started to take better care of Rusty, ensuring he had plenty of food and water, brushing his fur until it shone. It was a way of nurturing something, of showing love and affection, something she had been deprived of for so long. In caring for Rusty, she was, in a way, caring for herself. One rainy Tuesday evening, John came home later than usual, reeking of alcohol and smoke. He was in a black mood, his eyes narrowed and his jaw clenched. Anna knew immediately that it was going to be a bad night. "Where's dinner?" he slurred, his voice thick with anger.
"I'm starving."
Anna had prepared his favorite meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes and gravy, but she knew it wouldn't appease him. He was looking for a fight, a reason to unleash his pent-up rage. "It's on the stove," she replied softly, avoiding eye contact. He slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes rattle. "Don't you look at me like that," he roared. "You think you're better than me, don't you? You think you're too good for this life." Anna remained silent, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that any response, any attempt to defend herself, would only escalate the situation. He grabbed her arm, his grip tight and painful. "Answer me." Rusty, who had been sleeping under the table, sprang into action. He leaped onto John's leg, sinking his claws into his jeans. John yelped in pain and surprise, releasing Anna's arm. "Get off me, you damn cat!" he yelled, kicking out violently. Rusty held on, hissing and spitting. John managed to shake him off, sending him flying across the room. Rusty hit the wall with a sickening thud and landed in a heap on the floor. Anna screamed, "Rusty!" She rushed to the cat's side, her hands trembling. Rusty was lying still, his eyes closed. For a moment, Anna feared he was dead. John stood over her, his face contorted with rage. "That's what happens when you get in my way," he snarled. "You and that stupid cat." But then Rusty stirred. He let out a weak meow and slowly struggled to his feet. He was limping, and his fur was ruffled, but he was alive. Anna gently picked him up, cradling him in her arms. Tears streamed down her face, tears of relief and anger. She looked at John, her eyes filled with a hatred she had never allowed herself to feel before. "You're a monster," she whispered, her voice shaking. John scoffed and turned away, heading for the liquor cabinet. He poured himself a large glass of whiskey and downed it in one gulp. Anna carried Rusty to the bedroom, placing him gently on the bed. She examined him carefully, checking for broken bones. He was bruised and sore, but thankfully, there were no serious injuries. She cleaned his fur and applied a soothing ointment to his scratches. As she tended to Rusty, Anna's internal conflict intensified. She had always believed that she was trapped, that there was no way out of her situation. John had convinced her that she was worthless, that she couldn't survive without him. But seeing Rusty's courage, his willingness to risk his own life to protect her, made her question those beliefs. She thought about leaving, about running away and starting a new life. But the fear was overwhelming. Where would she go? How would she support herself? John had always controlled the finances, and she had no money of her own. He had isolated her from her family and friends, and she felt completely alone. That night, as she lay in bed, listening to John's drunken snores, Anna made a silent vow. She would find a way out. She would do it for Rusty, and she would do it for herself. The next morning, Anna went about her usual routine, but something had changed. She was still afraid, but there was a new determination in her eyes. She noticed a small, almost imperceptible detail. A flyer posted on the community board at the local grocery store, advertising a support group for women. It was discreet, with no mention of domestic violence, just a phone number and a time. A neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, a kindly old woman who lived across the street, saw Anna staring at the flyer. Mrs. Henderson had always been polite but distant, never interfering in the Petersons' affairs. But this time, she hesitated, then spoke softly. "Anna, dear, are you all right?" Anna looked up, startled. She quickly looked away, her cheeks flushing. "I'm fine, Mrs. Henderson," she mumbled. Mrs. Henderson didn't press her, but she said, "If you ever need anything, Anna, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm always here." It was a small gesture, a tiny crack in the wall of silence that surrounded Havenwood. But it was enough to give Anna a sliver of hope. Acknowledging Mrs. Henderson's offer, even with a silent nod, felt like a monumental step. It was the first time anyone in Havenwood had even hinted at knowing her secret, and it didn't come with judgment, only a quiet offer of support. This small interaction, coupled with Rusty's unwavering loyalty, fueled Anna's resolve. She knew the road ahead was treacherous, but the flicker of hope had grown a little brighter. The following weeks were a tense dance of false normalcy. Anna went through the motions of her daily life, but her mind was constantly racing, planning, and calculating. She started paying closer attention to John's patterns, his drinking habits, his work schedule. She needed to find the right moment, the opportune time to make her move. She continued to confide in Rusty, whispering her plans to him, drawing strength from his silent presence. She began to secretly stash away small items, a change of clothes, a toothbrush, a few precious photographs. She hid them in a loose floorboard under the rug in the spare bedroom, a room John rarely entered. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It represented a tangible step towards freedom, a symbol of her growing defiance. The tension in the house was palpable. John seemed to sense the shift in Anna, though he couldn't pinpoint the cause. He became more watchful, more controlling. He started questioning her every move, scrutinizing her interactions with the few people she encountered. He even threatened to get rid of Rusty, calling him a useless, flea-bitten mutt. Anna's fear intensified, but so did her determination. She knew she had to act soon, before John's suspicions escalated into violence. She had managed to memorize the phone number from the flyer at the grocery store, but she hadn't dared to call yet. The risk of John finding out was too great. One Friday evening, John came home from work in a particularly agitated state. He had been reprimanded by his supervisor for a costly mistake, and he had drowned his sorrows in whiskey at the local bar. He stumbled through the door, his face flushed, his eyes glazed over. Anna was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She tried to remain calm to avoid provoking him, but it was no use. He started yelling at her the moment he saw her. "What are you looking at?" he slurred, his voice dripping with venom. "You think I'm a failure, don't you? Just like everyone else." Anna didn't respond. She kept her head down, stirring the pot on the stove. He grabbed her arm, his grip tight and painful. "Answer me, damn it." Rusty, who had been sleeping near the fireplace, sensed the danger. He jumped up, his fur bristling, and let out a low growl. John glared at the cat. "You again?" he sneered. "I'm going to get rid of you once and for all." He lunged at Rusty, but the cat was too quick. He darted out of the way, hissing and spitting. John stumbled, losing his balance. He grabbed onto the kitchen table for support, but he knocked over a vase of flowers, sending it crashing to the floor. The sound of shattering glass seemed to snap something inside him. His rage reached a fever pitch. He turned his fury back on Anna. "You did this," he roared. "You and that damn cat. You're trying to ruin me." He shoved her hard. Anna lost her balance and fell backward, hitting her head on the corner of the kitchen counter. She saw stars, a blinding flash of pain. She felt a warm trickle of blood running down her temple. John stood over her, his fists clenched. He raised his hand to strike her again. Rusty, despite his small size and previous injuries, launched himself at John, sinking his claws into his leg. John howled in pain and fury. He kicked out, catching Rusty in the ribs. The cat flew through the air and landed with a sickening thud against the wall. He lay there, motionless. This was it. This was the breaking point. Anna looked at Rusty, lying limp and lifeless on the floor. A wave of grief and rage washed over her. She realized, with a chilling certainty, that if she didn't leave now, John would eventually kill her, or Rusty, or both of them. She saw the cat's unwavering courage, his willingness to sacrifice himself to protect her, and it ignited a fire within her. The fear that had held her captive for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a fierce determination to survive. "No more," she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "No more." She struggled to her feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in her head. She looked at John, her eyes filled with a newfound strength. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "And I'm taking Rusty with me." John was momentarily stunned by her defiance. He had never seen her like this before. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Anna didn't wait for his response. She rushed to Rusty's side, gently scooping him up in her arms. He was still breathing, but he was unconscious. She wrapped him in a kitchen towel, cradling him close. She grabbed her purse from the counter, ignoring the pain in her head and the blood that was now staining her clothes. She walked towards the door, her steps slow but deliberate. John finally found his voice. "You can't leave me," he yelled. "You're nothing without me. You'll be back. You'll see." Anna didn't turn around. She didn't look back. She walked out the door, into the cool night air, leaving behind the house of horrors and the man who had tormented her for years. As she walked, she whispered to Rusty, "We're free now, little one. We're free." The aftermath of the beating was a blur. Her head throbbed, her body ached, but the adrenaline coursing through her veins kept her moving. She knew she couldn't go to Mrs. Henderson's house, not yet. John would look for her there. She needed to get away, to find a safe place to hide. She walked for what felt like hours, her legs heavy, her arms aching from carrying Rusty. She finally reached the edge of town, where the houses gave way to open fields. She saw a small, abandoned shed in the distance, a relic of a forgotten farm. It was dilapidated and overgrown with weeds, but it offered some semblance of shelter. She stumbled towards the shed, her strength waning. She pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The air was musty and damp, but it was dry. She gently laid Rusty down on a pile of old burlap sacks, checking his breathing again. He was still alive, but he needed help. Anna collapsed beside him, exhaustion finally overwhelming her. She closed her eyes, her body trembling with fear and pain. But she had done it. She had escaped. She had taken the first step towards a new life. The seed of resistance, planted by a skinny ginger cat, had finally blossomed into action. She had found her courage, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet, unwavering love of a creature who had shown her the meaning of bravery. The first rays of dawn filtered through the cracks in the shed walls, illuminating Anna's bruised and swollen face. Rusty was still unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. Anna knew she needed to get him help, and she needed to find a safe place for herself. The immediate danger had passed, but the long-term challenge of escaping John's reach loomed large. She remembered the phone number from the flyer. It was her lifeline, her only connection to the outside world. But she couldn't risk using her own phone. John would surely track it. She needed to find a payphone, a relic of a bygone era. But she remembered seeing one near the town square. Carefully, she wrapped Rusty in a blanket she found in the shed, making sure he was warm and secure. She left the shed, her body stiff and sore, and began the long walk back towards town. She kept to the back roads, avoiding the main streets, her heart pounding with every passing car. She reached the town square, her legs aching, her head throbbing. The payphone stood in a corner, near the old post office, a faded blue box that seemed out of place in the modern world. Anna fumbled in her purse for change, her hands trembling. She had managed to grab a few dollars before leaving the house. She dialed the number, her heart pounding in her chest. It rang several times, and for a moment, Anna feared no one would answer. But then, a woman's voice, calm and reassuring, came on the line. "Havenwood Women's Support," the voice said. Anna took a deep breath. I need help," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I've left my husband. He was hurting me." The woman on the other end of the line was incredibly supportive. She asked Anna a few questions, ensuring her immediate safety, and then gave her instructions on where to go. There was a shelter, a safe house about 30 miles away, in the neighboring county. They could arrange transportation for her, but she needed to get to a designated meeting point, a small diner just outside of Havenwood. Anna felt a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone. There were people who cared, people who would help her. She hung up the phone and looked around, trying to get her bearings. The diner was about a mile away, on the old highway that ran parallel to the main road. It was a long walk, especially with Rusty in her arms, but she had no other choice. As she walked, she started to formulate a plan, a more concrete strategy for her escape. She knew she couldn't go back to Havenwood, not ever. John would be looking for her, and he wouldn't give up easily. She needed to disappear, to start a new life somewhere far away. She thought about her sister, Sarah, who lived in California. They hadn't spoken in years, not since Sarah had moved away after a bitter argument with John. He had always resented Sarah's independence, her refusal to conform to his expectations. Anna had a small, secret savings account, money she had squirreled away over the years, hiding it from John. It wasn't much, maybe a few $100s, but it was enough to buy a bus ticket to California. She could start over, build a new life, far away from John's reach. She reached the diner, a small, unassuming building with a faded sign that read Millie's Diner. She hesitated for a moment, her fear returning. What if John found her here? What if this was all a trap? But she pushed those thoughts aside. She had come this far and she couldn't turn back now. She took a deep breath and walked inside. The diner was almost empty. A few truckers sat at the counter, sipping coffee and eating breakfast. A waitress, a middle-aged woman with a kind face and tired eyes, greeted her. "Can I help you, honey?" she asked. Anna looked around nervously. I'm waiting for someone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The waitress nodded understandingly. "Take a seat," she said, gesturing to a booth near the window. "I'll bring you some coffee." Anna sat down, placing Rusty, still wrapped in the blanket, on the seat beside her. She sipped the coffee, grateful for the warmth. She watched the door, her heart pounding with every passing car. After about half an hour, a woman walked into the diner. She was dressed casually, in jeans and a sweatshirt, and she had a kind, compassionate face. She scanned the room, her eyes meeting Anna's. She walked over to the booth. "Anna?" she asked softly. Anna nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm Susan," the woman said. "I'm from the shelter. We're here to help you." Susan was incredibly understanding and supportive. She explained that they had arranged for a volunteer to drive Anna and Rusty to the shelter. She also assured Anna that the shelter was secure, that John wouldn't be able to find her there. They left the diner and got into Susan's car, an unassuming sedan. As they drove away from Havenwood, Anna felt a sense of liberation, a weight lifting from her shoulders. She was leaving behind the fear, the pain, the constant threat of violence. She was heading towards a new life, a future filled with hope and possibility. The escape was fraught with obstacles. They had to be careful, avoiding main roads and sticking to back routes. Susan explained that John might have already alerted the police, claiming that Anna had run away or stolen something. They needed to be discreet, to avoid any unwanted attention. But Anna had started to think about the practical issues. She needed money and identification. Her driver's license and other documents were at the house, and she had access to bank account which was shared with John. He would immediately notice if she withdraw. She explained the issue of her sister to Susan. Susan listened patiently, nodding her head. "We can help you with that," she said. "We have resources available to help women in your situation. We can provide you with temporary financial assistance, and we can help you obtain new identification. It will be a hard way." Anna felt a surge of gratitude. She was overwhelmed by the kindness and support she was receiving. She had been so alone for so long, and now, suddenly, she had a network of people who were dedicated to helping her. The drive to the shelter was long and tense. Anna held Rusty close, stroking his fur, finding comfort in his presence. He finally stirred, letting out a weak meow. Anna felt a surge of relief. He was alive and he was with her. As they neared the shelter, Susan explained the rules and regulations. It was a safe house, a place where women and children could find refuge from domestic violence. There were strict security measures in place to protect the residents from their abusers. The shelter was located in a quiet, residential neighborhood, a nondescript house that blended in with the surrounding homes. It was surrounded by a high fence, and there was a security guard at the gate. They were greeted by the shelter director, a woman named Margaret, who had a warm smile and a calming presence. Margaret assured Anna that she and Rusty were safe, and that they would be provided with everything they needed. Anna was shown to a small but comfortable room. It had 2 beds, a dresser, and a private bathroom. It wasn't much, but it was clean, safe, and private. It was a sanctuary. Rusty was examined by a veterinarian who volunteered at the shelter. He had a few broken ribs and some internal bruising, but he was expected to make a full recovery. Anna was overwhelmed with relief. The first few days at the shelter were a blur. Anna was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. She slept a lot, her body trying to recover from the years of abuse and the trauma of the escape. She had nightmares, reliving the beatings, the fear, the constant threat of violence. But she also found comfort in the company of the other women at the shelter. They were all survivors, women who had endured similar experiences. They shared their stories, their fears, their hopes. They formed a bond, a sisterhood of resilience. Anna began attending therapy sessions, both individually and in a group setting. She started to unpack the trauma she had endured, to understand the cycle of abuse, to rebuild her shattered self-esteem. It was a painful process, but it was also liberating. She was finally confronting her demons, facing the truth about her past. She also started working with a case manager, who helped her with the practical aspects of her new life. They applied for a restraining order against John, and they began the process of obtaining new identification for Anna. The case manager also helped Anna access the funds in her secret savings account, providing her with enough money to start planning for her future. The biggest hurdle was contacting her sister, Sarah. Anna hadn't spoken to her in years, and she was afraid of her reaction. She knew that John had poisoned Sarah's mind against her, filling her head with lies and accusations. With the help of her therapist, Anna wrote a letter to Sarah, explaining everything that had happened. She poured out her heart, sharing her pain, her fear, her hopes for a new life. She included pictures of herself, showing the bruises and the scars, and a picture of Rusty, her faithful companion. She mailed the letter, her heart filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. She didn't know if Sarah would believe her, if she would even respond. Days turned into weeks, and Anna began to lose hope. She had almost given up when she received a phone call from the shelter director. "Anna, there's someone here to see you," Margaret said, her voice filled with excitement. Anna's heart leaped. Could it be? She walked to the common room, her legs trembling. And there, standing in the doorway, was Sarah. The sisters rushed into each other's arms, tears streaming down their faces. They held each other tight, years of pain and separation melting away in that embrace. Sarah had received Anna's letter, and she had immediately flown out to see her. She was shocked and horrified by what Anna had endured, but she was also incredibly proud of her strength and courage. Sarah had divorced a year ago, and she was very willing to give a help. "I'm so sorry, Anna," Sarah said, her voice choked with emotion. "I should have been there for you. I should have known." Anna shook her head. "It's not your fault," she said. "John manipulated us both. He isolated me from everyone." They talked for hours, catching up on lost time, sharing their stories, their hopes, and their fears. Sarah assured Anna that she would support her in any way she could. She offered her a place to stay in California, a chance to start over, far away from John. Anna felt a surge of hope, a feeling that had been absent from her life for so long. She had a future, a chance to rebuild her life, to find happiness and peace. She had escaped the darkness, and she was finally stepping into the light. John was finally arrested, because Sarah hired a very good lawyer. Leaving the shelter was a bittersweet moment for Anna. She had found safety and support within its walls, a refuge from the storm that had raged in her life. But she was also eager to start her new life, to embrace the freedom she had fought so hard to achieve. Rusty, now much recovered, though still a bit skittish around loud noises, was by her side, a constant reminder of the courage they both had found. The journey to California with Sarah was filled with a mix of emotions. Anna was excited about the prospect of a fresh start, but she was also apprehensive about leaving behind everything she had ever known, even the bad. The vastness of the country, seen through the windows of Sarah's car, mirrored the vastness of the change she was undertaking. Sarah's home in a small coastal town in Northern California was everything Havenwood wasn't. Bright, airy, and filled with the sounds of the ocean. The constant roar of the waves was a soothing balm to Anna's frayed nerves, a stark contrast to the suffocating silence of her former home. Sarah lived a simple, but fulfilling life, working as a freelance graphic designer, her days filled with creativity and independence. It was a life Anna had always secretly yearned for. Adjusting to this new reality wasn't easy. Anna still had nightmares, waking up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding. She flinched at sudden movements, her body still programmed to react to the threat of violence. The trauma of the past was deeply ingrained, and it would take time to heal. Sarah was incredibly patient and understanding. She didn't push Anna to talk about her experiences, but she was always there to listen when Anna was ready. She encouraged Anna to seek therapy, and she helped her find a local support group for survivors of domestic violence. The therapy sessions were difficult, forcing Anna to confront the painful memories she had tried so hard to suppress. But with each session, she felt a little lighter, a little stronger. She began to understand the patterns of abuse, the ways in which John had manipulated and controlled her. She learned to recognize her own worth, to rebuild her self-esteem, to reclaim her power. The support group was also a source of strength. Sharing her story with other women who had similar experiences helped Anna to feel less alone. She realized that she wasn't to blame for the abuse, that she was a survivor, not a victim. She learned coping mechanisms, ways to manage her anxiety and her triggers. Rusty, too, was adjusting to his new life. He explored Sarah's garden with cautious curiosity, basking in the California sunshine. He still preferred to stay close to Anna, his loyalty unwavering, but he gradually began to relax, to trust his surroundings. He even started to play, chasing butterflies and batting at toys, a playful kitten emerging from the shell of the traumatized cat. Anna found a part-time job at a local bookstore, a quiet, peaceful environment that suited her perfectly. She loved being surrounded by books, by stories of hope and resilience. It was a way to reconnect with the world, to rebuild her confidence, to earn a living. The simple act of going to work, of interacting with customers, of having a purpose was incredibly therapeutic. The legal proceedings against John were slow and frustrating. He was charged with assault and battery, but he pleaded not guilty, dragging out the process. Anna had to testify, reliving the trauma in a courtroom, facing her abuser once again. It was one of the hardest things she had ever done, but she knew it was necessary, not just for her own justice, but for the protection of other women. With Sarah's lawyer's help and Anna's determined testimony, John was eventually convicted and sentenced to prison. It wasn't as long a sentence as Anna had hoped for, but it was enough. He was behind bars, and he couldn't hurt her anymore. The news of John's conviction brought a sense of closure, but it didn't erase the past. Anna knew that the scars would always be there, but they were no longer open wounds. They were reminders of her strength, her resilience, her ability to survive. Years passed. Anna built a life for herself in California, a life filled with peace, purpose, and love. She found a small apartment of her own, overlooking the ocean. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could finally feel safe and secure. She decorated it with her own things, with plants and books and photographs, creating a space that reflected her personality, her newfound freedom. She continued to work at the bookstore, eventually becoming the manager. She loved her job, the quiet rhythm of the days, the connection with the community, the opportunity to share her love of reading with others. She became known for her kind heart, her gentle spirit, her ability to recommend the perfect book for every customer. Rusty, her faithful companion, remained by her side. He grew old and gray, his playful kitten days long behind him, but his loyalty never wavered. He was her constant reminder of the courage she had found, the strength she had discovered within herself. He was a living symbol of her survival. One warm summer evening, as Anna was sitting on her balcony, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean, Rusty curled up beside her, purring softly. He was slowing down, his movements less agile, his breathing more labored. Anna knew that his time was near. She stroked his soft fur, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you, Rusty," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my life." A few days later, Rusty passed away peacefully in his sleep, nestled in Anna's arms. It was a heartbreaking loss, but it was also a peaceful passing. Anna buried him in her garden, beneath a blooming rose bush, a place where he could rest in the sunshine he had come to love. The grief was profound, but it was different from the grief she had felt in the past. It was a grief mixed with gratitude, with love, with the knowledge that Rusty had lived a long and happy life, filled with warmth and affection. He had been her rescuer, her companion, her friend. Anna continued her therapy, her support group, her commitment to healing. She learned to live with the memories of the past, to accept the scars, to embrace the future. She even started volunteering at a local domestic violence shelter, sharing her story with other women, offering them hope and support. She became an advocate, a voice for the voiceless, a testament to the power of resilience. She never forgot the darkness she had endured, the fear she had lived with for so long, but she no longer let it define her. She had found her strength, her voice, her purpose. She had learned to love herself, to trust herself, to believe in her own worth. One evening, many years after her escape, Anna sat on her balcony, watching the waves crash against the shore. The sky was ablaze with color, a breathtaking display of oranges, pinks, and purples. She felt a sense of peace, a deep contentment that she had never thought possible. She thought about Rusty, about his unwavering loyalty, his fierce courage. She thought about Sarah, her sister, her lifeline, her friend. She thought about the women at the shelter, the therapists, the volunteers, the strangers who had offered her kindness and support. She realized that she had not only survived, she had thrived. She had taken the broken pieces of her life and created something beautiful, something meaningful. She had found her voice, her strength, her peace. The little ginger cat, the skinny, frightened creature she had found huddled beneath her porch steps all those years ago, had been more than just a pet. He had been her savior, her inspiration, her symbol of hope. He had shown her that even in the darkest of times, even in the face of unimaginable fear, courage could be found, and life could be reclaimed. And in the quiet strength of an elderly woman watching the sunset, a testament to that courage remained, forever etched in the lines of a face that had seen too much, and yet still smiled.